So, Bill, thank you for taking your time today to join us for our second episode of Heroes of the Harvest. It's been a while, but yeah, why don't we just go ahead and get started? Tell me a little about yourself, Bill.
Yeah. As Diego said, my name is Bill Ashton, and I'm very thankful for the Farmer Veteran Coalition to invite me to do this podcast. Um, just a kind of a quick bio, because if I told you my whole bio, we would be here for an hour and a half, and you would never get to see the slides that I have for you. But
Yeah.
I joined the Navy in 1976, right out of high school, because I didn't have the money to go to college. I was going to do 4 years in the United States Navy because I wanted to serve my country, and then I was going to get out and become a police officer. Well, Lord and behold, I did join the Navy, and I went into the submarine force, and I really liked it. So when it came time for my enlistment to be up, I decided I was going to stay in. So if you fast forward, 23 years later, is what I spent in the Navy. I spent 10 years as an enlisted person, and then I applied for a commission through the Limited Duty Officer Program, which is a program the Navy has that you are selected to be an officer in a specialty based on your performance. I was selected, and I did 13 years as an officer in the Navy. So my specialty was administration and personnel, and it was a pretty interesting career. A number of tours in Washington D.C. I was very much involved with the Navy's pay and personnel system. I oversaw two personal support detachments, one in Washington D.C. and one in Hawaii. So I did get to go to Hawaii for about a year and a half. And after that, I came back to DC, did a couple of jobs there. And then in July of 1999, I left the Navy. And so, some of the questions, I guess, Diego, that you may have for me is, okay, so sounded like a pretty easy career for you. Well, okay. But you talk about getting out. Listen, that's a big thing. You
Yeah.
can go on LinkedIn and you can find people asking questions about transitioning, people not sure what to do. They talk about networking. And so when I was getting ready to get out, I hadn't made the decision yet.
Hmm.
And a captain who I served with, just out of the blue, I found a magazine with a picture of him in it. Now, I knew he had already retired. So I called him. He was in Pennsylvania. I called him, and his wife answered the phone and said, "Hey, what's happening?" I said, "Nothing. I just wanted to get your address because I wanted to send this to Dave." And she said, "Okay." She says, "Well, what are you going to do?" "What do you mean, what am I going to do?" "You probably coming up on retirement." I said, "Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do." She said, "Well, I think Dave would want to talk to you." So fast forward there, Dave calls me, and he offered me a job in Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, the job was with the company that invented the club. Remember that red stick that you put across your steering wheel? Well,
Yes.
I worked for them, and so I worked for them for 2 years, and so my transition was quite easy because I had a job before I left the Navy. Most people are getting out, don't necessarily have a job. They get nervous. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Um,
Do you have any accounts from like people that you know or any close friends in the military that how they felt when they got out of the military as compared to yours?
yeah, a lot of them really get nervous,
Hmm.
because it's a big decision to leave the military. Um, I compare leaving the military to the birth of a baby. And some people say, "What the heck is he talking about?" I'll tell you what I'm talking about. When a baby's born and they're no longer dependent on the mother, they cut the umbilical cord. And that's what happens when you leave the military. They cut the umbilical cord. You don't get a phone call from your chief or your first sergeant, 3 months later saying, "Hey, how you doing, Ashton? Everything okay? The family's doing good. You got health care, blah, blah, blah." It don't happen. And as you'll see in my brief here, the VA, and you got to give credit where credit's due, the VA calls every member who separates or retires from the United States services 3 times during their first year to have those conversations. How you doing? Doing okay? You got medical care through VA? You need any mental health type stuff? Your GI Bill? And things like that. So, the VA is doing a great job at reaching out to people. So, like I said, it's a big decision for some people. And if you don't start preparing at least a year in advance, you're going to get caught with your pants down when the time is to leave and you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah. Is there a difference between, like, for example, for you who spent 23 years in the military, as compared to someone who may spend a shorter amount of time? Do you think there's different levels of nervous, or do you think it's all about the same?
No, I think it's about the same. The only thing about doing a career in the military is you have some financial stability because you get your retirement pay right away. As for somebody who doesn't retire, they're not getting any money when they walk out that door.
Yeah.
So, is it easier? At least you have something, to rely on when you retire. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah. And then, so you said it was easier for you because you already had a job. Any particular difficulties then that were unique to your situation that you think stood out?
Well, one of the things is when you retire from the military, you have one move that the government will move you. And so, I moved to a very small town in Pennsylvania, very patriotic town. They had Amish people there, something I was not used to, and so it was, obviously you can tell from my southern accent that I'm from the South, the place south of Boston. It's called New York. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but, I tell you what, this town was really, really small. So for a New York City boy to go to something that small, it was interesting. Although I loved it though, because it was like a close-knit community.
Okay. And then you talked about briefing. Why don't we get into that? Tell me
Sure.
about this.
Okay. So I put this brief together a number of years ago because I've walked the walk and I've talked the talk. And I know as I go through the brief here, you'll see, as a matter of fact, let me just go to the next slide. This is my motto. Veterans don't know what veterans don't know, and it's not their fault. When you leave in the military, you go through that transition assistance program. They feed you with a fire hose. You get the Department of Labor, you get the Department of Defense, and you get the Veterans Administration giving you briefs all in 1 week. So I found it wasn't enough. So I made this brief up. I give it. At the end here, there's an email address. If you personally want to get the brief where I go into more detail and show you on the internet each one of the sites I'm going to talk about, then just reach out to me and do that. So that's what I found. I just found that, people they don't know. Like here's some of the things. If you're going to retire, people don't realize you get paid twice a month while you're in the military. Most people don't even realize that when you retire, you're only going to get paid once a month. I tell people before you retire, make sure your allotments that you want to keep are set and get rid of the other ones far in advance of your retirement. Something that a lot of people don't realize if they're retiring, that they have TRICARE while they're in the military. Well, if you retire, you can carry TRICARE into your retirement, but you have to reestablish yourself with TRICARE. So you have to re-register. Some people don't do that. They eventually go to the doctors. They find out they got a bill. They're all mad and things like that. So, they just make sure that they do that. The other thing is I tell people that, state benefits. It's the biggest thing I find that veterans don't even know. Every state has a Department of Veteran Services. And so these uh, links here that are in red, and Diego, hopefully you'll make this brief available to people if they want.
Yes.
But these red briefs will take you to those sites. And so, if you're preparing, just say a year in advance, maybe not sure where you want to go, you can go to this military.com link that I have there. And you can go to different states and find out what the state does for you as a veteran. And then the next one is when you retire, find out what states don't tax your military retirement. I mean, that's a big break. I lived in Virginia. Virginia taxed my military retirement until probably 2 years ago. They started to not tax a portion of your military retirement. But I'm in Florida now, and Florida does not, no, they don't have state taxes, so they're not going to tax my military retirement.
So when you moved to Pennsylvania, what kind of state benefits did you have available for you?
Well, that was a good 20-something years ago, so I wouldn't say that I knew enough for everything. I did know that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania did not tax my military retirement, so I was happy about that. But I really didn't know much about state benefits at that time. So
Okay.
just the research I've done coming forward is what made me learn all about this and why I share that with veterans.
Fair enough. Okay.
So there's a myth, you find this myth a lot of times with people getting out, and they say, "Oh, my knees aren't really that bad. I mean, it's just, every once in a while I get a pain in them," so they won't put in a claim with the Veterans Administration for disability. Putting in a claim for disability with the VA, I recommend everyone do it. And even if you get 0% disability, that's important because over the years, if that condition gets worse, you can put in a supplemental claim to increase that rating that you got for that particular disability. So I tell people, put in a claim. And by the way, you can put in as many claims as you want. It doesn't matter. You can do one right when you get out of the military. You can do one 10 years later. You can do it 20. It doesn't matter. And there's no limit to how many claims you can put in. Another myth, and I have found this with Vietnam veterans that I've worked with, their thought process is, hey, look, these kids coming out of Afghanistan, Iraq, different other places in combat and everything like that, they're coming back home. They may have PTS, they may have TBI, they may have an amputee, just a load of things. And I don't want to take any money from them. They deserve it. I'm okay. I don't need it. Well, the truth of the matter is you're not taking any money. The money for veterans benefits is called mandatory spending, and it must be provided. So believe me, you're not taking any money from anyone.
So take advantage of that as much as you can.
Absolutely. So one of the things I tell people who have been out of the military and they want to put in a claim now, whether it's 4 years, 10 years, 20 years later, I tell them to dial this 1-800 number, 1-800-827-1000. That's the Veterans Administration. And tell them you want to do a letter of intent to file a claim. What that does for you is it makes the effective date of your claim. And then you have a year to submit the backup information that you would need for your claim. So, if you dial that number today and you didn't get around to it until 6 months from now and you put in the paperwork finally, then the effective date of the claim will go all the way back to today and you would get all that back pay. You have a year to do it. The year comes up and you didn't do it, No foul. Okay. You didn't do it. You want to try it again? Okay, then call the 1-800 number again. So that's just something to be aware of. For people who are retired, TRICARE does not cover hearing aids or a chiropractor, but the VA does, the VA healthcare. So what I tell people, I wore hearing aids in the military, and when I got out, I really didn't wear them that often. My wife made the point to say that, and so she said, you need to get new ones. So I used TRICARE, and they told me, sorry, we don't cover them. That's weird. Covered them in the Navy when I was in the Navy, but don't cover them when I'm retired. So they told me to go to the VA, and I went to the VA. And so the VA gave me, top-notch hearing aids. Again, chiropractors. The military never really covers. I think maybe there's 2 chiropractors in all of the services while you're on active duty, so you're not going to get covered. But the VA does cover chiropractic care. But you have to be in the VA healthcare, and you have to have a primary care manager because that's the person who's going to put the referral in. Don't leave this brief saying, oh, Bill Ashton said you can go to a chiropractor if you're in the VA healthcare, so I'm going to find a chiropractor. It doesn't work that way. You got to have the referral from your primary care manager in there. VA has a great selection of frames for eyeglasses. Again, free. So just be aware of those there. The VA has different health groups. You don't even know about them when you get your disability and the priority groups. But really what it is if you're 50% or greater with the VA, you can be seen at the VA for any ailment you have. Anything less than 50%, it may start to get where they're just going to see you for your disability. And then it may get to the point where you make too much money. And the VA may literally turn you down for healthcare. And so I tell people, don't get excited. Just go to a veteran service officer, have them put in a claim. Even if you get 0%, that's better than no disability at all. And then what you would own up to be is there's probably co-payments that you may have to have. So just be aware of that. What community care is when the VA cannot see you, just say orthopedics or dermatology. If they don't have one of those places nearby in the VA clinic, they may put you in the civilian sector and you don't pay for that. So just be aware of that. And this Mission Act thing on the right here that I showed, they passed the Mission Act and said if you have to wait more than 28 days for an appointment in a specialty clinic, then you can request that they put you out in community care so that you can see a civilian dermatologist in your area. So just be aware of that. Don't just go with the flow, okay? If you're in the VA healthcare, and you notice I keep on saying, if you're in the VA healthcare, if you're VA healthcare, I'm telling you right now, when you leave the military, you need to go to a VA clinic and register with them. You need to be part of that clinic because if you're part of that clinic, you can play the VA healthcare against your other insurance because they don't talk to each other. Now, if you use TRICARE and go to an urgent care, it's going to cost you $35 as a co-payment. At least I think it's $35 now. But with the VA, if you're in the healthcare system and you tell them your insurance is the VA, they're going to ask you for your card. You'll say, well, I don't have one. Okay, give me your social, your date of birth. And they're going to call the VA to verify that you're in the VA healthcare. And then once they verify it, they're going to say, oh, Mr. Ashton, you're good to go. And so I say, well, what does good to go mean? And so I say, just wait for the doctor. There's no co-payment. No co-payment. Ain't that something? Where if you use TRICARE, you were going to have a co-payment. So you can play them against each other. So let's talk
So
about...
real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah, go. Sorry.
So how does, whenever he keeps telling people they need to get into the VA healthcare, where do they start? How do they get into that process?
So it's a pretty simple process, well, at least from my perspective, because I give this brief so often. But so either way, when you separate or when you retire, now you have the capability of putting in a claim with the VA while you're on active duty if you have greater than 90 days and less than 180. So between your 90th day of getting out and all the way out to the 180th day, you can put a claim in while you're in the military. My recommendation is to go to a veteran service officer and have them do your claim. They cannot charge you. If you go to an American Legion, a VFW, Vietnam Veterans of America, Disabled American Veterans, they have to do your claim for you. Now, if they say something like, well, you're not a member of our organization, so I can't help you. That's not true. They can't say that to you. They're obligated because they're accredited by the VA to put your claim in for you. And they'll talk to you about it. So let's talk about that process real quick.
Yep.
You find a veteran service officer. I happen to like using the state. Every state has their own Department of Veteran Services. Every state. I recommend going to a state veteran service officer because they're being paid to do this. So they probably keep up with all of the current events that are happening with disabilities. So when the claim is finished, the veteran service officer will upload it for you. They'll put it in the system for you. Now what happens then? Well, that's when it goes to a rating official in the VA and they review it. Now, the VA doesn't make up disabilities. They actually have, there's a law. It's CFR 38 Part B, I think, that lists all the disabilities. So they're not making stuff up. So they go there and they look at the stuff you're asking for and they figure out what level each one of those disabilities are there for. And then let's just say you have back problems and you put that in your disability. The rating official can't figure out how bad your back is because one, they don't see you, and two, they really don't define it when you go to your doctor. So what the VA does is they have contracted doctors or they send you to a VA hospital or a clinic to be evaluated by them. And so what they do is they write up an evaluation because now they're going to say, okay, bend over. How far can you bend over? Okay, 70 degrees. Okay, they write all this stuff down. And they send that report to the rating official. And now the rating official can look at the standards of disability and say, oh, okay, he's got this. Okay, he can bend over for 20% and this, that, and the other. Okay. And he looks at his disability rating and finds out where you fit. And that's how you get that percentage. When he or she finishes everything, then you're going to get a letter from the VA. And the VA is going to tell you everything that you put in for, how they evaluated you for that disability. There's 4 things that'll happen when you get that letter. You can suck it up, buttercup, and live with it. You can say, this is really crazy. I really want somebody else to review this claim because I'm not sure that person knew what they were doing. Okay. And that's what that's called is a higher level review. It means that the VA will take your package and give it to somebody above the rating official who made the rating for you or disability and have them review it. It may come back the same and it may even increase. But the third one is supplemental. And what happens there is if you put your claim in, let's just say for your knee, and let's just say you had a knee replacement while you're in the military, but you didn't include that when you told them you had knee problems. You can put in a supplemental claim So you have the evidence that shows that you had the surgery for them to take that into consideration now because you didn't have it in there when you put your original claim in. The fourth one is going to the Board of Appeals. If you go to the Board of Appeals, and I'll show it to you here in my brief, but if you go to the Board of Appeals, they're kind of backlogged. They used to be anywhere from 7 to 10 years before you'd get an answer from them. I think now they're probably anywhere between 2 and 5 years. So, just be aware of those things there. But that's the process of, how you do that. Now, getting into the healthcare. So there's 3 pillars of the VA: Veteran Benefits Administration, Veterans Health Administration, and burial. Those are the 3 areas. Now, I notice you may find this a little, you may not understand this, but the truth of the matter is neither one of them talk to each other. So when I talk to people and I say, are you in the VA healthcare? And they say, yeah, I'm at 60% disabled. No. I asked you if you're in the VA healthcare. I just told you I'm 60% disabled. Now, you're not getting it. You're 60% from the Veterans Benefits Administration. I want to know if you register because you have to physically register to get into the VA healthcare. So hopefully that, Diego, kind of answered the question. I mean, it was a long way around it, but
Yeah.
that's how you get into it.
Okay.
Disability, how they rate you. Well, one thing I want to say, if you are retired and you get 50% or more disability from the VA, you will collect your full retirement and your full disability. Anything less than 50% for retirees, what the VA does is they take the disability, the amount of money that the VA is going to give you, and DFAS takes it out of your retirement check, sends it to the VA, and the VA sends it to you tax-free. You are literally paying your own disability. So why do I say that? Contact your congressman, your senators. Tell them it's crazy. You're paying your own disability. But I'll show you at the end a quick way that they do it, because a lot of people get their letter and when they add everything up, they're at 80%. And then they find out that the VA only gave them 40%. And they say, boy, these people in the VA not too smart. They don't even know how to add. If you are leaving the military or have been out of the military for at least less than a year, you can actually take your SGLI, which is the Survivors Group Life Insurance, SGLI, and you can convert that over to VGLI, Veterans Group Life Insurance. And the reason I talk about that is because somebody like me who's had some medical issues, if I apply for regular insurance, it's going to be very costly to me. But when you do it from SGLI to VGLI, there is no physical. Then I ask you no questions. You just do it. Now, your SGLI is $500,000. You may say, I don't need $500,000 anymore. You can lower the amount you want to transfer over to VGLI. But let's say you say, well, 100,000 is good for me. That's fine. But I will tell you that you can't increase it later on. You can only decrease it. So just be aware of that there. DIC, Dependent Immunity Compensation. And when I give these briefs, I always like the spouse to be there because it affects them. So what is DIC? DIC is a payment that the VA pays the spouse when the veteran dies, if they die from a service-related disability.
So is that similar to benefits under service-connected benefits for spouses?
Well, I would say yes. When people, and I probably should remember to do this every time I give the brief, the majority of benefits that come out of the VA are for the veteran and the veteran only.
Mm-hmm. This
is a benefit that the spouse. So when the veteran dies and he's collecting disability, it stops. boom, it's over. No more.
Yeah.
This is a benefit that a spouse could be eligible for if, again, the veteran died of a service-related disability.
Okay.
If you're rated at 100% disabled, the VA will cover your dental care, veterans dental care, no one else's. And just be aware of that also. So one thing I tell people is, I don't care if you're in the military, you're out of the military, just go to va.gov and create an account. It doesn't hurt to have it. And I'll just tell you, it does get to be a little monotonous in doing it. It's just not filling your name and everything like that. It is also for your VA healthcare. So VA has done a pretty good job of saying, okay, in va.gov, we're going to have the benefits section in there. We're going to have the medical section in there, and we're going to have the cemetery section in there. Wow. So somebody thought about that. That's great. So if you're in the VA healthcare, this is what your VA healthcare looks like. Kind of looks like TRICARE to an extent. You can compose a message to your primary care manager, secure. You can schedule an appointment. You can view your appointment. Prescriptions. I've been retired now, a long time, but I use the VA here where I live. And let me tell you, if I forget to refill a prescription, I get a text on my phone and on my watch. And it says, you have a prescription that needs to be refilled, and it starts with ASP, aspirin. But they'll just put the first three letters. And then I just come here and I go to refill prescriptions, and it has all the prescriptions I have at the VA, and I find my aspirin and I click it. And normally with anywhere from probably 2 to 5 days, I get that prescription sent to my house. They are fantastic. You want to look at lab results? I'm a diabetic, so I get blood work done before I see my doctor, normally 3 days beforehand. I look at the lab test ahead of time to know if the doctor's going to yell at me or not. So I'm ready for it. Great system. In the beginning of the brief, I talked about the military.com, and it lists all of the states, and you can kind of get an idea. Well, this is a sample of what one looks like. This is what Florida looks like. And so this is the military.com under Florida, and it kind of gives you an idea of what Florida does for veterans. This is a very generic one. Using military.com for this is a generic one. I tell people to use the Department of Veteran Services for all of the states. And it just so happens here, the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs website, if you click that link, it's going to take you to a map of the United States. And then you just click the state you're in, or you're going to go to, whether you retire or when you separate, you click that one. And that's the official one of that state. And that gives you everything about what the state does for you as a veteran. So I mentioned early on, we were talking about healthcare, that some veterans don't realize that they're not eligible for VA healthcare. But I tell people, one of the things we're dealing with the VA is always be patient, but be persistent. So if they turn you down because of your financial status, then I want you to go to a veteran service officer and see if there is a potential for you to get a disability. Now, I'm not telling you to lie or anything like that, but if you go to a veteran service officer and you say, I have ringing in my ears, but I never thought that was a disability, well, that's tinnitus. And so, yes, it is a disability. So if they put you in for that disability and you get the letter from the VA, now you take that letter and the DD-214, and you go back to that clinic and you say, hi again, it's me. I would like to register here. And they won't give you that financial statement. Once you get a disability, the financial statement goes out the window. And again, depending on your disability, will tell you whether you may have a copayment or they may only see you for your disability rating, or like I said, 50% above. They see you for everything. It doesn't matter. The VA has a VA survivors kit. I kind of like that one because not only does it have you list, the will, where the property is, car insurance, all the insurance that you typically get when you're filling out something like that. But it has the VA claims in that same package. So your spouse doesn't have to go looking, well, he passed away and I got in touch with the VA, but I don't know what form I'm supposed to. They're all in this one package, so it's very convenient. So I tell people that they ought to look at that. One of the things that the VA does do for you, the VA healthcare, is once you get your disability rating and you register with the VA healthcare. I'm really
Yep, I
drilling that
repeat
in.
that.
Am I drilling that in, Diego? You better get in there and register with the VA healthcare.
Say it one more time for our listeners, just in case.
Well, you better register with the VA healthcare. So once you get in with the VA healthcare, you can dial this number and they'll send you your own personal Veterans Health Benefits Handbook. It has your name in it. It says, Mr. Ashton, you have gotten 60% disability from the VA. And here's a chart of all the things that you're eligible with the VA for healthcare. Wow, it's pretty nice. So just be aware of that.
One question I do have is,
Yeah.
So what's the difference between service-connected benefits and veterans pension?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Totally two different things.
Okay.
So a lot of people think, okay, I get a VA disability. Some people even say the word, I get a VA pension. No, you don't. You get a VA disability. VA pension. I can't explain it in depth, but it's if you go to the VA and search pension, it'll come up and show it to you. But if you're not making, I don't want to say enough money because, I make a lot of money and I don't think it's enough, but they have set standards for it. And so if you meet the criteria for a pension, the VA will pay it to you as a veteran. The veteran dies. Well, the disability goes away, right? Well,
yeah.
The spouse can also apply for a VA pension also. It's not a lot of money, but you want to know something? It's better than nothing. It has nothing to do with disability, doesn't have anything to do with in the VA healthcare, all the stuff I'm telling you about. Pension, totally separate. A lot of paperwork, but it's worth putting in for it to see if you're eligible to get some extra money from the VA. So that's the difference between pension and VA disability payments, and the two of them shall not meet. So don't think, well, if I'm getting VA disability, I'll never get a pension. Not necessarily.
Okay.
The VA has a welcome kit, so you can click here and it'll bring you to the VA welcome kit. And what it does is it kind of tells you all about what the VA does. The education part, the healthcare part, your GI, post 9/11 GI Bill talks about the home loan guarantee. So it's a great document. You can look at it online to help you as you go through things. Remember I told you that when you leave the military, they cut the umbilical cord. Well, the umbilical cord is not cut. It is a hand transfer from DOD to the VA. And lo and behold, the VA does take it upon themselves to call you 3 times during the first year that you're out of the military.
How often are those 3 times? Like how spaced out are they?
I think it's the 90th, 180, and 365.
Okay.
But I'll show it to you here in a minute. I just show you this slide here. This Pause for Vets Service Dog Placement Program. They're in Wilmington, North Carolina. I have a service dog, and so I just show people this one here. But what I really, really want to show people is the VA actually has service dog veterinarian health insurance. The VA has veterinarian health insurance? Yeah, that's exactly what I said. And if you click this, it will show you the actual fact sheet on it. But in a nutshell, if you have a service dog and you got it from an organization that's accredited by the Assistant Dog International, ADI, and you have that dog for mobility, sight, hearing, or seizures, you can apply to the VA to get veterinary health insurance on your dog. I have it. I don't pay for it, and the VA covers everything. If my dog needs heartworm pills, they cover it. If I go to a wellness for my dog, they cover it. If the doc says, hey, your dog's a little chubby there, needs to lose some weight, I want to put your dog on a special type of food, the VA veterinary health insurance covers that. So I have a friend of mine whose dog, his service dog, was for mobility. And unfortunately, the dog got cancer. They had to operate on him. And, it was about $12,000. He paid nothing.
Wow.
So just be aware of that. If you are looking to if you get a dog for PTSD, that it's not covered. I don't agree with that, but that's what the VA says. So,
Yep.
If you're not happy with what the VA is doing with you, claims taking too long or something like that, you can dial the White House. The White House has a hotline for veterans, and it's right here. And what they do is they kind of use, I think they use a program called Remedy, but I could be wrong. But it's a case management. So you call this 1-800 number, 1-855 number. The VA takes all the information on you, and then they send it over to the VA, and they track it. So it does kind of kick the VA in the you-know-what to get moving on it, because it has White House thought processes behind it, an overview. So just be aware of that. Remember, I told you there's 4 things that happen when you get your letter. Suck it up, buttercup. Do a higher level review. Do a supplemental claim. Or go to the Board of Appeals with the VA. If you decide you want to go to the Board of Appeals, this link here will take you where lawyers throughout the United States have offered to help veterans with their appeals, and it's free. So just be aware of that. We have 17 veterans are committing suicide a day. I just want to make sure everybody knows about the 988 number. And then what I also ask people to do is to take this 1-800 number, 1-800-273-8255, and put it as a contact in your cell phone. Now, people, when I give this brief, said, well, listen, I'm not looking to commit suicide. And I never thought you would. But what I do want you to have it in there just in case you're around somebody who's thinking about committing suicide. You can get to that number probably quicker than they can, even if they may not even know about the number, and dial the number and get them on the phone.
And I'm glad you touch on that real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
Because mental health isn't something that is often talked about, or at least not as much as it probably should be in the military community. And when people ask you about, or if you heard about like people coming out of the military, is mental health something that's usually the first few things on their minds, or is it something that kind of just flies over their head?
I think the statistics say that within the first year of leaving the military, there's a high risk for people, whether it's retirement or separating. And I think that goes back to the transition. Some people have real difficult times with it, I mean, let's take a look at, just say, somebody who's just been in the military for 4 years, have a wife, maybe 1 kid, and they get out. Remember, healthcare went out the window because we took care of you while you were in the military. You had commissaries. You were guaranteed a paycheck every 2 weeks. And now all those things go away. And sometimes they really, really get to people. And it starts building up with them. So that's why, you can call that number if, you're having issues. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm going to kill myself. No, it's a crisis line. So you can call them. So to your point, Diego, that's what they say. A lot of people in the studies that they've done, it's normally during their first year. Doesn't mean that all of it's in the first year. I mean, you have people who have been out of the military for a number of years who commit suicide, unfortunately. So the next thing here, if you ever have to get any of your military records, you can click this link, and this link will take you to the archives, and you fill it out. And I will tell you, my wife was in the military. She got out in 1988, and we needed her DD 214. And so we went on this site and asked, to get her records and everything like that. And lo and behold, 72 hours later, this was all online, by the way. 72 hours later, we got an email, and then we got a separate email with a code. And we went to the link and put that code in, and lo and behold, her records were right there. So it works, So just be aware of that. If you have to correct your military records, there's another link. You can, I believe you can do it online. Don't quote me on that, but it tells you, how to fill out the form and what you need to do and where you need to send it. If you're a combat veteran, you're eligible for 10 years of VA healthcare, whether you go for disability or not. But I'm telling you, when you get out of the military, you should go and just get disability. But if you didn't, and you are a combat veteran, you are eligible. And this link here will tell you the fact sheet of that one. So I talked about VGLI. Well, the VA has come up with their own life insurance also. So, people who missed that window of opportunity, the first year they were out. And, years later, they said, oh, man, I should have got that VA insurance. So this is a link to the VA insurance. It's new, but you have to be under the age of 80 or below. So just be aware of that. And then VA benefit eligibility metrics. Again, if you get the brief, you can just click these on and they actually bring you to the site. Know your VA benefits. I know it says burial benefit, but that just happens to be the page that it brings you to. But I call this the Google of the VA. If you were to click this, it will bring you to a site and you can find everything you need to find in dealing with the VA, whether it's your GI Bill, whether it's disabilities, whether it's CFR 38 Part B, which is all the disabilities. You can look at that. So you can go through all of these things and just see everything there. So that is a great site. VA has put together another end-of-life benefits, and this is something you should sit down with your spouse. If you're not married, then maybe a family member, brother, sister, whatever, niece, nephew. But what you are requesting and what benefits people are eligible for when you pass. So it's a good start, and you should do that early on. Every time I give this brief and I leave my office, my wife always says, and when are you going to do this for me? I probably ought to do that one of these days. Veterans Legacy Memorial. Now, I got to tell you this right now. I think this is the greatest thing that the VA has done. This is part of the burial cemetery portion of the VA, the other pillar. And what it is if a person, a veteran, or a spouse of a veteran is buried in a VA national cemetery, the VA has gone to every one of those and identified exactly where the location of that headstone, or if they were cremated, they put them in, I forget what they call it, but they identify exactly where it is. So when you pull it up, this legacy memorial, and you say, oh, my dad is buried in Arlington. Well, what's great about it is, and Arlington is an example of one of the better ones, not only do they show you where your grandfather's headstone is, they've taken a picture of it and put it on that site. But that's not the end of it. You can upload pictures of your grandfather. You can write tributes to your grandfather. And this is why it's called a legacy. The legacy lives on, so people know about it. So I think it's a great thing. I ask people to share it, but I don't share it with everybody. It doesn't get enough publicity. The Military Officers Association of America, MOA, they come out with a report card, once a year on the states that tax your military retirement. Just be aware of that. But if you
Would you
go
say
to,
this report card is like a good guide for
yeah,
someone getting out of the military to like, oh, where
when
should
you
I
get
move
now,
next?
yeah. So that's one. The other thing is to go to the Department of Veteran Service for the state, because they're going to tell you whether they do that.
Mhm.
They'll tell you if they give you kind of exemption for your property taxes on your home. So I always tell people, go to that one site, which is the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs, and use that one as gospel. So you're out of the military for 10 years, and, you say, son of a gun, I should have put in a claim when I got out. And maybe it's your back. And there's nothing in your military record. But you've had this problem and you've kind of just been going to the doctors, getting pain pills, and, you're living with it. This Nexus letter is a letter that can be signed by your doctor that says, I have reviewed Mr. Ashton's medical records. I've talked to him. I've been following him for the last 10 years. He's had these back problems. I'm convinced his back problems were service connected. And he signs it. And then you get any documentation that says you've been to the doctor, whatever. You put those two together and you put a claim in to the VA. Now, having a doctor's Nexus letter is not a guarantee that you will get approved by the VA for disability for that issue, but it will help. Okay. So if you would click this link here, it'll bring you to an actual Nexus letter that you could give your doc to see if they would fill it out for you.
And then going over all these benefits, I do wonder for the more unique situations.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if a veteran receiving benefits becomes incarcerated, do they still continue to receive those benefits? And so what's the process?
I believe they still continue to collect their disability payments, but don't quote me on that one.
Okay, fair enough.
This year, I'll just talk rather quickly with it. Psych Arbor and Psych Armor and Psych Hub. Psych Armor is more toward military culture. They're free. They're avatar type training. And obviously, in some cases, it's a person doing the training. And then Psych Hub I thought is really good because that goes on along the lines of mental health. And so I knew somebody who was bipolar, but I didn't understand when they said they were bipolar. I said, yeah, I don't understand it. So I went on Psych Hub, and they have a training on bipolar, and it made me then further understand what that person is going through. So these are just things that you can go look at. The other thing is how do they get involved in the Former Veteran Coalition? Well, I got involved in it because my last 4 years with the federal government as a civilian employee with the government was with the Department of Agriculture. So I was very fortunate. I was the military veteran agriculture liaison, and I got to meet Michael Gorman. I got to meet Jeanette and the team, and I would come to the conferences and talk a little about what USDA is doing for veterans. One thing I found out about was USDA handles SNAP, the old food stamps. And I never knew about that. So I always put that link in here and tell people, listen, don't be embarrassed about it. Sometimes we all need a helping hand. So to apply for it can get crazy, the forms and everything you have to provide, but it's worth it. Now, some people say, yeah, I filled out all those damn forms and all I did was get $25 more a month. So that's a waste of my time. That's your decision. But $25 is $25 you didn't have. And it's all on an EBT card. So it's not like, the old days when you had those coupons and you were at the grocery store and pulling these things out, it's not like that anymore. So just be aware of that. If you're applying for PTS, and I want to clarify something right up front. PTS is not just related to combat. And so these are the symptoms, kind of like the range that the VA looks at if you say you're putting a claim in for PTS. And this is kind of their chart of what they're going to use to see where you fit in from 100% to 0. So just be aware of that there. So here's my thing here. The most important part of my brief is the DD-214. It is your gold card to all VA benefits, and make sure someone other than yourself has a copy. Because if you pass away and we want to give you a military send-off and everything like that, or the eligibility for X amount of money for burials and this, that, and the other thing, you don't get it if you don't have the DD-214. And by the way, we can't wake you up when you're dead and say, where'd you put the DD-214? So just make sure someone other than yourself has it. And if you're still in the military, list all the hot spots that you've been to. So something like Camp Lejeune happens years later. Agent Orange happened years later to affect people. So this is my email address. If you really want the brief, I go in depth. I know it's been about an hour that we've been going through this, but I actually take you to the sites. Okay, real quick. This is how the VA figures things out. You have 30% for lower back strain, right shoulder strain 10%, and tinnitus 10%. So the VA says when you come out of the military, you're 100% perfect. So you got 30% for the lower back strain. So 30 from 100% is 30, right? So you got 30%. But you have 70% left over now. And you got 10% for your right shoulder. So 10% of 70 is 7. So, okay, you got 7% now. So that leaves you with 63% of your body. That's good. And you get 10% of that, and 10% of 63 is 6.3. You add 30, 7, 6.3, and that comes up to 43.3 equals 40%. They only round up when you hit the 5 or above.
Yeah.
So a smart person would, when they got their letter, would say 30, 10. I'm at 50. Sorry, you're not there. You're not at 50. So just be aware of that. That's how it works.
Okay.
And that is everything, Diego. And I know we probably went a little further than what was expected, but I hope
it's fine.
Hope it was helpful.
Oh, it will be. It's all important information. And I'd like to close out on, once again, mental health care, because that's something that FEC is trying to push out. You mentioned psych armor. FEC does QPR training. Have you heard anything about that?
On what type of training?
QPR.
No.
It's question, persuade, and then refer. It's we do training a couple times a month for our members. It's free to join via Zoom, and they go through training to be certified to be for QPR, to where they can help their peers and suggest their peers to get help, the help they need. And we're also working with psych armor as well.
Yeah.
For suicide prevention training and stuff like that. Is there anything else that you would prefer veterans for mental health care?
Well, the only thing that I say to that, and until I took the suicide prevention that psych armor has.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to people and you say, you know what to do, and they'll say, oh, I've never been trained in this. I don't want to get involved in it. I didn't know that. Listen, if a person has suicidal ideations or anything like that, don't say you don't know. You do know. And what you do know is stay with that person. You have that 1-800 number or 855 in your cell phone. Do not leave that person. Call that number and get them on the phone and get them help. You may not be an expert in it, but you can get that person in touch with the people that they need to get in touch with.
Okay. Well said. And any final thoughts, any last words you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I just hope you enjoyed it. I know it went probably a little further than what we expected, but again, my email address is there. I do one-on-ones for the brief, and what I do on my one-on-ones is once I finish the brief, I actually take you to those sites and explain to you how it works. So just be aware of that.
Okay. And what's that important sentence you want to say one more time, just to get it through our listeners' heads?
Why, did you forget it already? You mean register with the VA healthcare?
You already forgot. Can you say it one more time for me?
Oh yeah, register with the VA healthcare.
Thank you for that, Bill.
Yep, great. Well, hey, Diego, thank you, and thank the Former Veterans Coalition for allowing me to give this brief because I really think it's important that people know about it because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
up to my second slide. Veterans don't know what veterans don't know, and it's not their fault.
I completely agree. Thank you for your time, Bill.
Okay, Diego, take care.